Now you are welcome along to the football show. These are interesting times in the world of football. We will, by the way, bring you live commentary of Manchester United against Liverpool on Sunday from Old Trafford, just to mark your card if you're wondering about that game. In the meantime, tomorrow night on the show, Dan McDonnell will be in studio. Wednesday evening is a Champions League evening. Very happy to say Kenny Cunningham, the man himself, will be in studio for the night. It's the first time since pre-March 2020 that has happened, so we're really looking forward to having Kenny in for the evening. Thursday, John Giles with Nathan, and then Robbie Fowler is coming up next week. We have a Cadbury Roadshow next week. Robbie Fowler, the main guest. And over the weekend just gone, John Duggan was chatting to Peter Schmeichel. Ger had Brian McClare on Friday, very interesting character. So actually, not a bad lineup when you list it all off like that. And of course, Damien Delaney is with us now. Hello.
Hi Joe, how are you?
Most importantly, Damien Delaney is with us now. You're keeping well. You enjoyed the football over the weekend. What caught your attention? What matches were you watching?
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed it, actually. I watched a lot of games. I watched a lot of highlights of games as well. I watched the Everton game yesterday, which probably was a bad choice. It wasn't the most amazing of games, but nonetheless, I enjoyed all the games. I enjoyed watching all of the subplots unfolding, really, as the season's wearing on. It's starting to take shape now. Die has been cast, and it's very, very hard to change now once you start getting moving in the season. So just watching all teams unfold is pretty good.
Well, subplot's probably an understatement for what's going on at St James's Park. It was very much the story of yesterday, and probably has been the story of the last week or so. We saw Amanda Staveley in the Sound. We saw Yasser Al-Rumayyan, the new Newcastle chairman, governor of the Public Investment Fund. We saw Anton Deck. All the stars were out, This was a big occasion at St James's Park. And Spurs promptly came and beat Newcastle 3-2. And Newcastle are very much in a relegation fight now. They're on 3 points. They're in 19th. They are 3 from safety. So a reminder, lest it was needed, that for all the money and for all the excitement in the short term, very little is going to change. This will depend on what they do in January, obviously, but Newcastle, how much of a relegation fight do you think they have on their hands? I know lots of people would love them to get relegated for just the sheer hilarity of it all this season.
Yeah, it would be great to see them in the championship, see what they could attract, how many players would be willing to go there. But I think the next few weeks is going to be vitally important for them, because if they get cut adrift or they leave themselves with too much to make up, all the signings in the world could find it difficult in a relegation battle, and the pressure that will come with. Listen, by the way, I don't think Newcastle are going to get relegated, but I just think that if they did kind of fall apart between now and January, before the reinforcements can come in, and they find themselves maybe 5 or 6 points adrift, which is very, very possible, then they could find life very, very awkward indeed, because obviously the expectant media, crowd, everybody is just watching Newcastle, and if there's 5 or 6 points adrift, it might be difficult for them to make them up. I'm pretty sure they will. I don't imagine Steve Bruce lasting a whole pile longer in the job, for the very reason I just stated. It's not a risk that they want to take or they can take. So how that unfolds in the next few weeks will be really, really interesting.
To put the money we're talking about here into some kind of context, so the Saudi PIF, the Public Investment Fund, is worth 320 billion sterling, which is 14 times more than the Manchester City owners. So to say money here is no object is an understatement. This is going to be serious. But I did want to get your thoughts on the footballing aspect of this. The more controversial aspect has been well discussed. You mentioned there you don't think Steve Bruce will last much longer. I would think a lot of the players wouldn't expect to now last a particularly long time at Newcastle. This is a weird atmosphere, I would think, to be a part of. Lame duck manager is complicated at the best of times, and now you have a dressing room who just hear the clock ticking. I will be replaced by someone either in January or in summer, or certainly by the following January if they can do it.
Yeah.
That's a really hard dynamic to try and build some kind of sense of involvement and camaraderie, and we're in this together and we're working towards something. I can imagine the arse falling out of the atmosphere in that dressing room very quickly.
Yes, that is very, very possible. But I think from a player's point of view, I was involved in something similar, not on the same scale, when I was at QPR, and I signed, and the Mittal family and Briatore and Bernie Eccleston bought, and then they signed. I was one of the 12 players that they signed in the January, and we all just arrived, and we'd all been given, new bumper contracts, and it was a great atmosphere to be involved in. And I do remember a lot of the players that were there who kind of were being ushered out. It can be very, very difficult. So speed is going to be crucial for these guys. Now, they're going to have to make a statement sooner or later in terms of a statement of intent with what they do. Because expectancy is through the roof, and they want to utilise that. They want to use it and ride that kind of wave of optimism that's around the place. And that's where I think that Steve Bruce won't be around much longer. I like Steve Bruce. I think he's done a pretty good job in difficult situations. This is not a slight on Steve Bruce one way or another. It really isn't. I'm pretty sure if Steve Bruce had more funds or could maybe operate a little bit differently, maybe he could have got more of the squad. But I think he's done enough at Newcastle there to warrant getting another Premier League job. And I suppose the good thing is for him, from his point of view, is he's going to get paid up in full. Absolutely. And I think that, when they do decide to pick a manager, Steve Bruce could quite easily say, well, I want every penny of what my contract is. And the owners won't want to delay. They won't want to enter into any negotiation with him. More than likely, this is going to give him every penny just to move him on, as I said, because there is a time kind of pressure with Newcastle at the moment. And January is going to be very, very similar. Now, if I was a player in Newcastle, my mind would be thinking kind of one of two ways, one of three ways, really. I suppose the first way would be, well, we're all going to get, sold or moved on or training with the under 21s when they sign 10, 11 players over the next 12 months. But as a player, you're going to be thinking, well, I'm going to get paid up my contract as well. I'm going to get every cent. If they don't want me, they're going to have to pay me up to move me on. And it might mean some of them have to go back to the Championship. But look, from a financial point of view, if you're a player at Newcastle, no, it's not going to be the end of the world. From a playing point of view, some of them might have done enough or be good enough to continue playing in the Premier League or get another Premier League club. But some, if not, definitely go all the way to the Championship. But they're going to go there with some big checks really in their back pocket. And the third way of thinking about it really is I might get to be a part of this. Callum Wilson will almost certainly be thinking, if I can keep scoring goals, they're going to need 4 centre forwards. They're not going to sign 4 centre forwards in the next 12 months. And if I'm part of it, I can kind of piggyback the wage structure, which is going to explode in the next few months. So there are certain players there who are of a pretty good level. Lascelles is a decent player. I know that John Joe Shelby's played at a top 4 club before as well at Liverpool. He's a decent player. Callum Wilson, so they'll all be thinking, can we ride this as well? So I don't think it'll be as down and out and dour as what you think it is. I think it's going to be a really exciting time.
Interesting. Well, I did read Steve Bruce will be in line for about 10 million sterling. So
well, there you go.
That softens the blow. There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
That softens the blow.
And his CV means he's going to get a job tomorrow if he did get sacked today.
On the players you mentioned there who may be approached and told, well, there's not a place for you here anymore, you were saying they can get their contracts paid up in full. How does that tend to work? I guess the options for the club are, one, we approach the player and we say, yeah, look, you've 2-3 years left here. We don't see you as being part of the plans. Yeah. You're owed X. Can we meet you halfway? And the player will presumably say, no, you're paying me every cent or every penny. And so the club might do that. Is it in the club's interest to just keep a player around for 2-3 years rotting in the reserves? Do you think they will approach a lot of players and pay them off?
Yeah, absolutely. They won't pay them off, but what they'll do is they'll actively be trying to move certain players on now. So they will be saying, well, whoever the new manager, if a new manager comes in, he'll have a list of players I want to keep, players I want to get out. And the players that are going to be wanted to be moved on are going to be touted around to other clubs. And those players will get offers to go elsewhere. And then obviously the player will say, well, I can go to Club X, but I need you to pay me X amount of money to go. So the players could essentially double up their money because they could get a full payout of their contract from Newcastle and then get paid again the same amount of money at the new club they're at. So it can be quite a lucrative position that a lot of players find themselves in when they get moved on. So the clubs will try to negotiate, but again, they're not going to want an under-23s or a training ground packed with maybe 10, 11, 12 players that have been told to move on, because that will obviously influence the atmosphere. So the club will try to negotiate with them, but in the interest of expediency, they will probably just cut them all big checks and move them on down the road. If if, and it is a minor if or a major if, depending, they do go and spend the type of money that everyone thinks they're going to spend in January.
As for those players who you said might be part of it, you said the wage structure is about to explode, which I'm sure it is. So say you're a Callum Wilson and you're his agent. He might have 4 or 5 years left on a deal. I don't know the situation, but just take that in theory. Does agent then go to club and say, hey, things have changed here, we need to renegotiate my player's contract, you're doubling his wages because everyone else around him in that dressing room was on X? Will the club be receptive to that, do you think?
Possibly, absolutely. But I mean, they might not even necessarily say we're going to double it, because I mean, let's say the certain wage structure is a certain amount of money and other players come in on 5 times that money, then the agent won't be saying, well, I want to be up with the new stars and the wage bill that's there, but like, you need to give my guy a little bump. But a little bump in the vicinity of the top guys is incredible. And someone like Callum Wilson, who will and can and will score goals, and you need a 25-man squad, and it's going to be a number of years before Newcastle have 25 world-class players, similar to Manchester City. I mean, you just need to look at what happened there when they took over. They signed Robinho straight away as a statement of intent. So this Newcastle thing isn't going to explode overnight. You know, they probably, will just maintain the Premier League status this year. They'll boost with maybe 2 or 3 players in January. They'll do another 2 or 3 or 4, 5 possibly in the summer, and then have a cut-off top 4. But I mean, the season after next, will they make the Champions League? Possibly, but it's maybe 3 seasons down the line before we really start seeing it, because it is difficult time-wise to instigate the change that we're talking about. It won't just happen overnight.
Yeah, there was a piece yesterday in the Sunday Times with Mark Hughes and his assistant at the time of the Man City takeover, and the owners called him in advance of the Robinho signing and were making the point that it was either going to be Robinho or Ribery, and they got Robinho, and you kind of think Ribery might have been a better option there, the way things played out. They were also saying it was extraordinary behind the scenes. Mark Hughes had half mentioned to the new owners that the training ground was only so-so, and at the very first international window, everybody was told, well, don't come near the place for 10 days. And when they all arrived back, the training ground had been completely done up and remodelled and took all their breath away. So from the off, money was just being thrown everywhere. You were one of those 12, you said, that went to QPR in January.
Yeah.
Was there resentment when all you boys pitched up from the mainstays in the dressing room? No, not at all. All those lads were good as gold. I mean, that's the thing about football, is they understand that it's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault. The owners have done what they've done, and they've signed 12 players. You didn't need to drive into the training ground in a red Ferrari.
Not quite, no. But the lads that were there, as I said, got moved on over time. Okay. And I'd say in the space of like a year, the squad had completely changed. I mean, there was 1 or 2 guys, like Martin Rowlands, who was QPR. He actually played for Ireland back in the day under Trapattoni. He was QPR, born and bred, and he was captain at the time, and he managed to get kept on. But I remember then, like that, when they said they were keeping him, his contract got altered to kind of be brought in line with everybody else's, because you can't have your captain on a certain wage when everybody is brought in is on a certain other wage. Now, the scale of Newcastle is obviously incredibly different, but the mechanics of what's happened is very, very similar. Yeah.
And what was it like being in a dressing room where there was so much change? Did it feel less bonded than, say, the Palace dressing room when you had a bit of a groove going?
Yeah, it's very difficult when you get 12 players coming in from all over the place. It's very, very difficult to settle. There was an Italian manager there, a guy called Luigi Di Canio. I think he knew he was probably going to get fired at one stage, and the atmosphere got very, very strange, but we were all enjoying ourselves. The football we played was great. We done really, really well. We ended up finishing mid-table that year, but then they changed the manager, and then obviously the owners were extremely impatient and they wanted success straight away, and they couldn't understand that they went out and bought so many players, and players who had experience of getting promoted to the Premier League before. Why weren't we top of the league by 5 points after like 5 games? That type of carry on. I mean, Ian Dowie got sacked and we were 7th, I think, 2 points off the playoffs after 5 or 6 games. So that type of stuff happened, and then there was an upheaval. Another manager came in and he got sacked, and then the whole thing got very, very strange. And it was only kind of after I left that Neil Warnock came in and managed to get a handle on it. But by then, I think the club had changed hands anyway. So it can get messy if it's not done right, and you need the right people in the right positions to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I'll bet. So Graham Souness, by the way, was writing yesterday in the Sunday Times, and he made a suggestion where initially I thought, no, we just can't do this. But then the more I thought about it, there might be something in the idea. He was suggesting moving the training ground to London as a way of getting bigger name players there. Now, I think from a PR point of view, they could never come out and move the training ground to London. However, they could come out and say, we are building a second training ground in London. It makes sense, and it'll reduce travel and for certain parts of the season. And then I'm sure it'll turn out in 2 years' time they've spent about 4 days in the Newcastle one and the rest of the time in the London training ground. Look, it wouldn't be popular with fans, and in some kind of grim way it would really copper fasten just how dislocated clubs are now. They're just bought by foreign owners and have very little relationship to the area. But as soon as was getting at something, they will struggle to attract real top line players to Newcastle in the short term. Like, there's going to be this phase of dud signings, I would think, where there will be a period, these super talented players, I think...
Is that what I was at QPR, Joe?
Precisely. I'm talking about I want you to picture the Damien Delaney types at QPR here. That's exactly what I have in mind. But there will be a type of player, right, that I would be suspicious of, whereby they could go elsewhere and they might prefer to go elsewhere, but the money will sway them to go to Newcastle, and Newcastle will pay this premium to get them up north and less glamorous and all the rest of it. I don't know about those types of players, that kind of just below top tier where there's a mercenary quality. And I know all players are mercenary to some extent, but I think there are going to be dud signings along the way, and the Newcastle aspect, as opposed to say a London club, will come into play here a little bit as well. Give us your sense of that, because you'd have a feel for how footballers think and talk.
I think initially yes, because although the financial side of it will be great, there will be a big issue with regard to getting players to move to Newcastle, and the project and success and having Champions League football will play a bigger part. If Newcastle are playing in the Champions League and the kind of money that we're talking about is on offer, you won't have a problem getting players to go to Newcastle. The problem is going there while it's in its bedding in phase or in its infancy or it's having its teething problems. That's the issue that they'll really struggle with. When the project is near completion and they have a new training ground, the stadium's been upgraded, they're regulars in the Champions League, they're competitive for the Premier League, you won't have an issue getting players to Newcastle. Initially, you might do, but yeah, I take your point, but you're right. To get the real elite up-and-coming Erling Haalands, you might struggle because there's going to be a bedding in or an infancy kind of period where it's going to be difficult. But in the long run, it won't matter. The money's going to be paid and the project's going to be on offer. So that idea of moving to the training ground to London is off the wall and is a non-runner from the start. And I didn't see it, so I'd be reluctant to comment on Graham Souness's way he meant it.
He said, I know this sounds crazy, but actually, as a way of selling the place to a Spanish player and his girlfriend, London training ground is the way to go. I mean, I'm not misrepresenting him.
So you expect the fans of Newcastle to show up, cheer, support on a Saturday afternoon at St James's Park, knowing that the only reason they got this guy is because he could live in London. I mean, that's not ever going to work. That's an insane idea. I mean, he said it was crazy. He knows it's crazy. Maybe he said that tongue in cheek. I'm not sure, but that is, I mean, the biggest non-runner I've ever come across in my life.
Well, I hope these same fans aren't deluded enough to think that the player is pitching up at Newcastle because they really feel something about the city. I mean, it's all about money anyway, so let's be grown up about this. All the Newcastle fans turned up at St James's with tea towels around their heads. I know,
but there's a charade that's why they're coming.
Okay.
But if they go to London, I think that charade is well and truly.
It's harder for the charade. Yeah. God, there's something grim about that, isn't there? We're going to take a very short break. I want to talk to you about Manchester United, obviously, and they play Liverpool on Sunday, and Mo Salah and a few other bits and pieces. Football on Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. We're back with Damien Delaney in just 1 second.